victims. Away from Africa to the United States, where the death toll from a fierce winter storm that gripped much of that country over Christmas has risen to at least 61. Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz revealed that 2 more deaths had been reported in the western New York region that bore the brunt of the historic storm, bringing the total to 39. 9 deaths were reported in storm-related car crashes in the Midwestern state of Ohio, with a scattered fatality in at least half a dozen other states. Mr. Poloncarz further explained that 17 of the 39 victims were found outside, 11 in homes, 4 in cars, while 4 others died while shoveling or snow blowing. Another 3 deaths were the result of an inability of emergency responders to reach them in time. Meanwhile, Britons have been warned to expect the return of snow in the coming weeks as the weather is set to take a decidedly chilly turn. Forecasts have highlighted a renewed possibility of snow across the UK from the 8th of January, including the south of the country and across London. And joining me to discuss more on this is a senior consultant, climate change impact and adaptation, Atkins, Dr. Justin Udie. Good to have you join us.
Good afternoon to you, Precious. Nice to have me.
So before we go just specifically into what's going on now in the US and Canada, but let's just look at the year generally. And I want to get your thoughts on climate change this year and its impact. How would you describe it?
Well, I would say it was a really challenging year for practitioners and policymakers, as well as ordinary citizens so far. Unfortunately, you look at what's happened in the Nigerian situation where 33 out of 36 states were flooded. We came from the Kentucky event. Look at what happened in India, what happened in other countries. There have been, events of flooding, events of storms all over the years. So environmentally, I would say it was really a very troublesome year for the mother nature. And of course, it is not unexpected to say it, just that it's become really scattered, and the seriousness of this conversation need to go a little bit higher than the way it is at the moment. But generally speaking, it was a challenging year environmentally to talk about, especially looking at climate change and other related disasters.
And what about adaptation? How well have we done in terms of adaptation all through the year?
Yes, so I would say, thank you. That's an excellent question. If you look at the priority or prioritization of climate change response generally, what we have at best at the moment is mitigation. So if you look at different countries, they are all talking about energy transition, talking about how they could mitigate this. But there is not that much, in my view, and the view of maybe other practitioners, not much is being done in terms of adaptation. That's what I would say about that, and really say that we really need to start investing in adaptation, especially, I'm not saying that it should be a blanket investment. It has to be very realistic investment that takes into recognition the realities in every geographical system. If you look at developing countries, I would give it about 70% to maybe 30 in terms of adaptation and mitigation. So we have not done so well in terms of adaptation generally. And it's not just in developing countries, a global need for adaptation.
And hopefully we'll talk more about that in the course of the conversation. But let's now zero in on what's happening in the US and Canada, especially the US. It has now been called once in a generation kind of storm. But how much of this can we link to climate change?
Yes, so I quite understand that it's easier these days to link these events to climate change. Normally or conventionally, climate will change. Events like this will happen after a very long period of time. It becomes climate related when we look at the severity and frequency, or possibly the likelihood of this event happening consistently, not given that much of gap. So at the moment, I will not be tempted to say it is climate change. Give it some time. And I'm also I'm not arguing that it's not climate related, so it's something we need to handle and discuss carefully. Once in a generation event, yes, it's still happening. If it becomes more frequent with this magnitude and likelihood going forward, then we'll begin to look at, yes, there is maybe anthropogenic impact or anthropogenic influence in the occurrence.
But when you look at the fact that the UK is now being asked to brace up for a return of the winter or a return of snow, could we not then link both events and say perhaps this might be the result of climate change?
Not straightforward, like I said, not straightforward in the case of winter. This is winter anyway, so it's a period where we expect that it is going to be. In the US and the UK case might not be exactly the same. Remember, these events are all related to the geography and location of different regions or countries, so it's going to be very different. If you look at the UK forecast, for instance, it's not like an extreme event or getting to minus 50 degrees like the case of the US in forecast. So to me, it's still manageable. When it becomes extreme, that is where we begin to think that, yes, there could have been impact. But generally speaking, yes, there are indicators, an element of suspicion of climate change influence in any of these events. So I would think that the UK issue is going to be ripple effects, maybe wind blowing up from the way the storm settling all around. And the concern of people will be that, yes, this is not really a good time of having, temperature getting too low because energy prices have escalated. So families are struggling, government struggling to manage the economy. So in a way, that is one humongous monster that people will need to deal with during this period.
And when you look at 2023, which is just a few days away, do you think that things are likely to be better next year? You already said it was very difficult here, flooding in some parts of Africa. We had cyclone, we had earthquake. There was even some parts that had flooding, but other parts were just praying for rain because there was drought. How do you think it will turn out next?
Depend on the lessons we learn from this year. If the people that are responsible for preparing our society generally, how we respond to this event, then we'll expect that it might be better. But if we talk about the event itself or the events themselves occurring, I don't think that we are going to have it or not in the next year. It will depend on how we prepare. Remember that this event doesn't occur like the serial line. We're going to have it this year, we're going to have it next year, we're going to have it next year. No, it might differ. Certain things might not happen next year. But the truth of it is that, if you ask me from experience, is we need to sensibly prepare. That sensibility in preparation is about planning and not to over-invest in an event that may not occur when you have maybe need for finances in other sectors. So we need to adequately, government, all stakeholders at all levels need to adequately assess their vulnerabilities of communities and businesses and plan on how to adapt to this in the next year. If we have this adequately planned for, then we will think that next year will be better than 2022.
And I think adaptation is the key word. And just quickly, I want to bring it back home, which is Nigeria. What more can we do in terms of adaptation?
Well, if you look at the Nigerian situation, looking at the flood that just occurred, you know that we don't have access roads, our rivers overtopping. They've been talking about the Lagdo Dam for a very long time. We need to cushion that gushing water that is coming off from the Benue Basin into all the way to Lokoja, where you have the confluence. That need to be, awareness need to be there. People need to be trained at different levels. And ultimately, government need to be very serious. When I mean serious, I mean in all fiber of my vein. Now talking that government need to be very serious in committing and holding those agencies responsible. NIMET will try as much as possible to be accurate in the data. NIMA, I think the emergency response need to be there on time and work hand in hand, because there is no agency that can solve this problem or respond to this problem holistically and address them. So it needs to be a combination, a collaboration of the federal government, the state government, the local government, and communities working hand in hand to ensure that we understand the vulnerabilities from one geopolitical zone to the other and plan according to those vulnerabilities and be very serious about it. That's what I would say.
I like that you said understanding the vulnerabilities in different geopolitical zones instead of just putting up a one-size-fits-all solution. Thank you so much for talking to our senior consultant, climate change, impact and adaptation, Atkins Global, Dr. Justin Udie.
Thank you so much, Precious, for having me. Good afternoon.